Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Catafo. I run West Coast Go-to-Market at SecurityPal, and joining us on today's episode of In Security is Clea Ostendorf, Field CISO West at Code 42. And today our topic is Big Brother and security tools. Thanks for joining us, Clea. It's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Before we get into our topic, though, I would love to hear your story about how you became a field CISO at Code 42 and maybe a little bit about your day-to-day.
Okay, sure. So field CISO is sort of a newer role, right? So everyone has had a different journey. Some people come from, they've become a CISO and now they are in the field capacity by working with a vendor. And others, like myself, have gone a different path. So my role came about through being an advisor for our customers. Prior to that, I worked in application security. Prior to that, I did some product management, lots of sales behind that, and then recruiting and in the staffing world. So my path is totally different than most people, but I approach it really with my role now today with what is the business trying to do and how is security going to enable that? So yes, technology is important. There's smart people behind that to make that hum. But you also have to sell the business that you're trying to achieve something. And that's where I'm coming in to marry these two places.
Love it. That's amazing. So recruiting and sales through engineering and product development to field CISO, that is quite a journey. You've touched all the bases. I'm curious, was there a thing that happened in your career at some point where you're like, this actually seems like where I fit or where I should be career-wise?
No, it's probably why I've had so many different roles. The reason why I got into security in the first place was out of curiosity, right? Like, well, what happens if you take back this layer and what's underneath this and why are you doing this? And so it's that like curiosity that really drove me in the first place. And then the ability to kind of merge that with getting things done from a business perspective kind of landed me here. And security is always changing. We're constantly looking for new perspectives. The threat landscape is changing. So why not have a different perspective to try and solve these problems, the old ones, the classic ones that we're always trying to, address. And then how do we look at the newer landscape? So that's where I've come into play in this world.
Really cool. So I guess, for the topic of the day, we're going to talk Big Brother and security tools. And I really like this topic because I think there's really three different sort of viewpoints or vectors. You've got companies who have this responsibility to protect their own data, their customers' data. And then you've got employees who are probably just sometimes wondering like, hey, I just watched a YouTube video about how to fix a kitchen sink. Does somebody care about that? And then you've got security companies, customers, and and them having to strike this balance of risk mitigation and protecting their own employees' privacy. So, okay, that's a whole mouthful, but like these three different worlds, I think, collide in your day to day. And I'm sort of curious, like how this comes up for you, or how is this top of mind for you, particularly in like what you do at Code 42?
Sure. So Code 42 is a data protection company. We sit on the endpoint. We have cloud connectors to pull in information from multiple sources, anything from, what's happening, external websites. People are sending things on LinkedIn to Signal to various vectors. And what happens is we go all the way through. We're talking to the security engineers. They say, "Oh my gosh, this is an amazing solution. We see all this data. We can help with investigations. We're going to get ahead of this." And then it gets to legal, and legal says, whoa, 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 whoa. I see that you're collecting a file. This is now in the realm of employee privacy, and I don't know if we want to touch this. So then this whole conversation around Big Brother comes up because we are all afraid of being sued by the powers that be in the GDPR regulation space or CCPA. And, as they continue to grow their teeth, and rightfully so, because we've had people collecting data and using it for whatever purposes they want without much regulation or oversight. And now there's this balance of, can we collect this data on our employees versus are we actually able to use this? What do we do with it? So it's that balance of, we need this to secure our customers' data and our internal systems, but we also are terrified that we might be crossing the line. So I have this conversation about Big Brother all the time, to kind of walk people through what that actually looks like.
Wow. So like I imagine there's some times where like you have this conversation and a legal department at a company still goes, yeah, no thanks. Like this isn't going to work, or this can't work. Does that ever come up?
Unfortunately, yes. But I mean, here's the reality. You're already collecting all this information, right? I'm on a browser right now. There's logs that we can look at and see exactly what I was doing, how long I was there, how long I was, on this particular tab versus on YouTube, right? It's just how is the organization going to use it? What is the risk tolerance for people doing things that are outside of, direct company applications? And how do they want to respond when they see something like that? A government organization probably is going to lock down their machine a lot more than, a startup who says, hey, your work laptop is your laptop. Do what you want with it. Don't put anything on your machine that you don't want somebody to see. To me, it's sort of obvious, but, there's still that debate.
And so when this debate comes up, is how does the legal, like for the legal teams that are able to overcome the objection and get comfortable with this, I guess what are some of maybe the main tenets there that help with that? Like things that information you provide that help them get past that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's, with any technology that you're going to deploy, it's really important to define roles, of how it's going to be used, when it's going to be used, who's going to have access, and then how that data is going to be managed. We're unique in that we collect the file. That doesn't mean that everyone wants to see the file, but you have to really define how you're going to respond when you see something. If you see somebody going to a website that, they probably shouldn't do, maybe it's been flagged that it's suspicious or has ties to, malicious payloads, whatever, you're going to respond differently than if somebody's just going to YouTube. So there's a level of risk tolerance in what you're seeing that needs to be brought into even how you respond in the visibility with any of your tools.
And this is more probably for my own curiosity. So Code 42 is collecting this data, and then basically customers of yours have the ability to say, okay, great, we want to do something with this or not. And then you're basically like creating alerts and things like that for them to basically make decisions around and kind of tying it together. Is that my
Totally.
understanding? Okay.
Totally. And it's all based around risk tolerance, which again has to be set by the organization. So that's something that, rather than legal being afraid that we're putting something that is monitoring employees, which by the way, again, you're collecting all this information anyway. This is just a more refined way to look at it. Rather than thinking about what are we doing with this data, think about, what is the intention behind it? Are we trying to stop people from doing stupid mistakes? Yes. And how are we going to respond to that? What is our risk tolerance for somebody when they're, sharing links publicly versus what is our risk tolerance when somebody is leaving the organization and sharing links publicly? There's a difference. And so setting that boundary of what is trusted and when do you want to respond is an important conversation, both on the practitioner level, but also something you need to share with people who are afraid of whatever, new technology you're bringing in.
So that's an interesting point, and it's probably something for anybody listening out there, whether they're an employee who's getting ready to leave a company or whether they're a security leader. But like, I'm curious, like, where do you see most of the issues sort of arising in terms of like data protection? Could be data loss, whether it's data loss, et cetera, et cetera. Is it around an employee leaving a company, or are there other sort of events or things that come up that you either help monitor or that companies just need to be aware of in general?
I would say two areas. I would say there's the shadow IT aspect, where, hey, I'm in marketing and I just need to get this out to this third party who I'm paying with a credit card. And yeah, so what? It's our roadmap. They're going to make it look pretty for me and they're going to bring it in. The second one is that departing employee. And that's where we can tie risk directly to some sort of activity, right? This person is leaving. They no longer need to have access to all the files and all the data that they were working with. And if it leaves our environment or our trusted sources, then we really care about it. And that's when you can kind of tie a specific event to a behavior and then take action.
Okay. And then on the shadow IT, is there like some way in which you're able to detect somebody using software that's maybe just not part of a registry of vendors that the company uses to do third-party risk management?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see all of that. I think that the more challenging part around that is, do you have time to track it down and enough to care? And that's when it depends on, where is this data coming from? Like, what are they sharing? Is it going to affect our business? Are these the crown jewels that we need to track down, or can we focus on, the more defined scenarios that we can respond to?
Makes sense. And yeah, for a 50-person company, it may be pretty easy. If you've got a 5,000-person company, it can be a little more challenging. Okay. Like, I guess moving over to the employee side, like how do companies, or I'm curious, how does, Code 42, I know you've talked about it before around just like, okay, great, you're being monitored, but how do you address some of the concerns around privacy, and what are some of the common sort of themes you hear come up from either employees or HR legal departments within companies?
So we really take the stance of transparency, both in what is being collected and how it's going to be used. And so that harps back to just basic access controls. This is one person who's going to be able to read the files. This is when we use it. The only time we're going to be alerted is if you do something that is outside of the policies that we have already defined. So it's almost like your legal team and your organization has created some sort of boundary that they believe is appropriate for their risk tolerance. You can go to outside websites, you can browse whatever, we don't care. But if you share a file from one of our sensitive repositories and you send it outside of this bound of trust that we have established as an organization, then we care about it. So being transparent about how that data is going to be used is really key. I have seen both sides, where some companies want to not tell their employees at all, and they only want to respond after the effect, after something's happened. And then on the other side, and this is more effective, I believe, where you're transparent. Say, hey, we have a data protection program. This is our policy on how we want you to use the company data. If you do something that is against policy, you're not going to be punished. You may get a Slack message from someone in security asking you to validate that this is an actual business case, it wasn't a mistake, and we'll help you correct it. I think you can go about this either with a hammer and said you violated policy, you're going to be monitored now more intensely, or you can approach it from a more human perspective, which is where I believe is important, and come at it more gently. Hey, you made a mistake. We're all trying to move fast. Let's course correct this together. And that does two things. One, it doesn't scare your employees. Like, oh my God, security's watching me. I don't want to do something bad. I don't want to do my job. Can I do this? So it's preventing that, but it's also helping them be aware of what they're doing and helping them, not click on every link, just like phishing used to do, right? Those phishing trainings, I don't click on every link anymore because I've been trained. So you can do the same thing with data security. It's a different approach than blocking everything.
Interesting. And so like, I guess in terms of policies or companies doing, because I feel like there's a couple approaches too, right? There's the like, I always think of this as like, it's like the terms of service you get, like when you're like clicking through Apple to like sign up, like you get a new computer. It's like, hey, read our terms of service. Like, I'm probably not one of those people that reads through all of that. I imagine 95% of people don't do that. Is it like that type of ledger around here's our policy and here's what we're going to be looking at? Or is there something a little bit more, I guess, truncated, maybe more hands-on, like it could be a video training or something along those lines that folks can digest in a couple of minutes, but like really worth their time to digest to really just get an understanding? I mean, do you see both of those or one of those working better than the other in terms of just like being transparent about a policy?
What do you think? Of course, if you, I mean, if
I think the video works better, but again, it's just me. But
well, yes, I completely agree with you. So I never read the terms of agreement. Don't tell anyone until I had this job. Until I was until I was having to build programs around the policies that existed. I was like, yeah, sure. I'll just trust. If I do something wrong, somebody's going to tell me. That was my mentality, right? That's your average user who says, I'm going to do what I want until you tell me I can't, right? So if that's your average user, how are you going to actually tell them what's acceptable? You have to do those videos, and you have to have that incremental change or incremental reminders for them to be effective. So we do, Code 42 does have a module called Instructor, and it's very soft little empathetic videos, something like, hey, I see you shared a public link. Did you mean to do this? Yes, no, yes, okay, please validate why. No, here's a video on how to redact that, or something like
interesting.
that.
So is this part of training, or is this actually part of the product offering where like folks get alerts?
Yeah, this is you didn't know this? This was good. This was a good lead in. Totally organic.
No, this is I did not know this. No, this is great.
Good. Yeah, so and it was directly because of the problem you're describing. I mean, you can approach data security by saying these are the policies, we're going to block this, but a user is going to do what they want until you can show them gently how to course correct. So that's really the idea behind the training modules, and it's a way to respond. Rather than blocking, why don't you try and understand the intent from the user? So either you can, build that application that they're sending something to into your acceptable products. It's no longer shadow IT. Now you have the right security controls, the right security visibility around it, or you can course correct them into a better method of sharing. Another common example is iCloud syncing. If you have a Mac, you can easily sync all of your data constantly into a personal iCloud account. You probably don't want your corporate data on somebody's personal machine, right? So it's another way to simply course correct.
I didn't even think about that one. So that's. I just wonder now. I even get my head going in like this direction of like, yeah, what is Apple like? How are they? What are they syncing other than my photos and videos, which I think is the only thing I at least intend to have in there. But what else are they taking from the phone? Is a good question. So okay, good to know. Now I'm going to be looking at my phone and digging through terms of service and looking at iCloud later today.
Yeah, that's a long contract.
So what, I guess, like, I'm curious, like in your day to day, how, like, beyond, does this come up the most with customers? Does this ever, I don't know, maybe if you have a good story that we can anonymize around like where this came up, either internally or with a customer, and maybe some issues or like fun story we can share with folks of like something how it either happened, how Code 42 sort of helped either rectify it sort of post-mortem and like dealt with it, and or I don't know, just your own experience of like where this has come up. And
well, here's a common one. So most people are still working remote. I mean, going to the office, but there are a lot of people, or how about a handful, usually in most organizations, who are working multiple jobs. There is, in fact, a whole Reddit chain of overemployment, right? So these are tech workers like you and I who have one machine going, type, wiggle Slack, do a few things, and then they have an entire another work life. Often they're in the same industry, often they're a similar job, and often the work is being duplicated back and forth and shared. So I'm not, sharing who this was, but it was a major tech company, major security company. They discovered that some of their engineers were actually having multiple jobs and sharing the source code back and forth. So that's, scary on multiple levels, right? Not only is this intellectual property that is the foundation of a product that they're selling, it's also going to a competitor who's trying to do the same thing. So in the end, who owns it, right?
Interesting. So I guess how did they put two and two together? I'm assuming there are multiple machines being used by the folks who are working multiple gigs, but how do the companies put two and two together?
Yeah, eventually somebody just uploaded a file that was related to their competitor.
What about uh, for 2024, the beginning of the year? I can't believe it's almost February. Like when it comes down, like when it comes to things in your particular arena, supporting. I imagine like you sit between like revenue and product and a bunch of different folks within the organization. Like, what are some things sort of top of mind around this topic in general, or things that you're doing or your team's doing to address concerns around this, whether it's on the legal side, the employee side, or the company side, et cetera?
Well, we're trying to. I mean, in the security space, there's a million and one products, quite possibly, literally. So we're seeing a lot of consolidation, as I'm sure you're seeing as well, and people are experiencing. So rather than fighting that and saying like, hey, let's jam one more product down your throat that's going to save you, why don't we build strategies around how we can work better together, truly building that ecosystem that we've always talked about. So that's been a huge focus of mine, and a huge focus of our organization. Let's build some strategic partners, not just in paper but in actual implementation. So I'll give you an example. Splunk is one of our customers. They're also one of our partners. People often ask, if you're trying to build an insider threat program, which data protection is a component, how can I use my existing technology to be more effective with your product? So why not take all those logs that you're getting in Splunk and building some stories that if somebody gets, elevated access, I want to know, and they exfiltrated data, and they're a departing employee, let's build this story together, build an alert, and that's more actionable than, hey, somebody has elevated access, okay. Somebody exfiltrated data, okay. Somebody's a departing employee, it's disparate. Let's actually operationalize all these investments that we've made. So that's a focus of mine right now.
Interesting. So are these stories like how many of these does a customer even configure? Because I feel like you can just this sounds like it would be like a fun part of onboarding of like how like what are some of the and I imagine there's like a template that your team has where it's like, okay, here's like 10 ones you just have to do. And then there's probably like another dozen or so where it's like, and you should consider these because these are depending on the business, potential threats, et cetera. But I'm curious how that works.
Yeah, we've built a lot of playbooks related to this, and I think it's necessary because people don't, we know our space so well, our little like security pal. You understand how to build the question, answer the questionnaires that everyone says, I hate these, I don't want to do them, and you're like, hey, no problem, we got this. We've done thousands of these. It's not hard for us. It's the same thing for my team related to data security. Like we understand the triggers that are going to matter, and we've built the playbooks for you. Now, if people are going to act on them, if they're going to ignore the alerts, or they're going to do something about it, or they want to respond, I mean, that's another story. But the thought leadership is there, the practice is there, actualizing it is another story.
Super cool. Well, I know we're almost out of time, but I figured we haven't talked about AI at all, so I figured why not? I'm curious if there's any new sort of stories or things that your team's looking at for customers, particularly around how folks internal to an organization may or may not be leveraging AI, and whether it's their own productivity or whether or not it's folks using outside LLMs or tools or whatever as part of their product offering. Like, are there certain things that you've built into onboarding, particularly around AI, or no?
Yes, we have some new things coming out feature wise, of course, like everyone else. The most interesting thing to me is we always get the question of, but is this normal behavior? Hey, this developer is sending all their code to this specific repo. Is this normal behavior for them, or should I care? Being smarter about the things that we're alerting on. You can still collect all the data, but what are we really elevating that somebody should take action? And then recommending this is the action you should take and automating that. So that's what we're working on. machine learning, bringing it all together to be more elaborated. I don't know. Maybe Q2 will have a release.
I was just say, is there anything public about, yeah, using AI in the product that you can share? So is it sound like, is that what's coming in
Yes, we
Q2?
have things coming.
Oh,
So there's the teaser. I'll tell you how we're addressing it from a data exfiltration perspective. We have ability to block, cut, and paste. I mean, how do you use like a chat GPT? You type in your prompt, you get something, you copy and paste it. Same thing, you can say, hey, here's the source code, let me paste it here. Tell me, how I can improve my code. We have the ability to prevent people from pasting to certain AI sites that we don't think are safe. Again,
interesting.
there's tolerance,
Okay.
but it's a one approach to preventing intellectual property from going into those feeds.
Interesting. So random other question now. Do you like have a list of, I imagine it's a growing list of just like suspicious websites or, websites. I don't know. I'm guessing there has to be some type of database, even the government level, that's like, forever growing around suspicious websites that you track behavior around, or that like you create alerts around. They're just like right out of the box. Like we look for these.
We don't. That's a great question. It was actually brought up in a roundtable I had this week with our internal security team. We use Cisco Umbrella, and that's what they do all day, every day is kind of compile those websites, and then that's how we protect ourselves internally. And I think to the earlier point of partnerships, that would be a great partnership, right? So you can couple, don't go, if somebody's trying to access these websites that we know they should not, with, hey, now they're doing other behavior. Let's, build this story and try and take some action on it.
Well, this has been so much fun. I can't thank you enough for having you on the show, and I really appreciate you joining us. This was a lot of fun, and would love to have you on the show again.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, and you got to keep us posted on Q2. I'm going to be setting alerts on my computer for what comes out the Code 42.
My PM is going to be like, what the heck did you just promise?
Well, Q2 could be what, June, July?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who knows when Q2 really starts or ends? Yeah, thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, so great to have you on the show again, Clea, and thanks so much for joining us.
Take care. Bye.